I never wanted the business. I only wanted peace. When Dad passed, the will split our lives in half. My brother, Daniel, got the company, and I got the crumbling house on the hill. Everyone laughed, even him. "You always liked old things," he said, smirking. But as I opened the house door that first night, the laughter in my mind froze. There were documents hidden in the attic, ones that shouldn't exist. Secrets that turned everything I thought I knew upside down. "Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now." The key stuck halfway in the lock before turning. The sound echoed through the hall, long and hollow, as if the house had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I stepped inside, dragging my suitcase over a strip of faded carpet. Dust floated in pale ribbons of light. The air smelled like paper, old wood, and memories that hadn't been touched in years. Every board creaked beneath me, each one whispering a different name from childhood. "Dad?" My voice broke the silence before I remembered. He wasn't here anymore. The study was exactly how he'd left it, curtains drawn, books stacked in perfect rows, that heavy mahogany desk at the center like a monument. On top sat an envelope with my name in his careful handwriting, "Clara." My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside, one short line. "What you own is more than you think." That was all. No instructions, no love, no goodbye. I frowned, rereading it, trying to feel what he meant. Then the chair leg scraped slightly as I leaned on the desk. Beneath it, something thudded. A loose board. I crouched, pressing against the carpet until it lifted just enough to reveal a small metal ring. A trapdoor. The hinges groaned as I pulled it open. Beneath lay a narrow compartment barely big enough to hide a box. And there it was, oak, carved with the initials DB Dad's, and my brother Daniel's. My stomach tightened. I hadn't spoken to Daniel since the funeral. I ran my fingers over the lid. Locked. The metal was cold, old-fashioned, the kind Dad liked. I tried to lift it anyway, but it wouldn't move. Instinct told me not to call Daniel. But curiosity won. When his voice came through the phone, calm and distant, it felt rehearsed. "What do you want, Clara?" "There's something here." In Dad's study. A chest. With our initials. Silence stretched so long I thought the line had died. Then. "You shouldn't touch it." The call ended. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind clawed at the windows, the pipes groaned through the walls. I kept thinking about Dad's words, "What you own is more than you think." By morning, I had decided to open the chest no matter what. I'd find a way to pick the lock if I had to. But when I stepped into the study, my breath caught. The chair was toppled. Papers scattered across the floor. The carpet around the trapdoor was wet, streaked with mud. The chest was gone. Someone had been here. I turned in a slow circle, heart hammering, searching for any sign of how they got in. The windows were closed, the door still locked from the inside. Then I saw it, something tiny blinking red from the corner of the bookshelf. A camera. The lens pointed straight at me. I froze. My reflection stared back in its glassy eye, pale and trembling. Whoever had been here last night hadn't just taken the chest, they were still watching. A faint noise came from upstairs. Floorboards shifting. Too deliberate to be the wind. I grabbed my phone, backing toward the door, pulse racing in my throat. "Daniel?" I whispered into the silence, though I didn't press call. The sound stopped. The house went still again, as if it had heard me and decided to wait. I forced myself outside, locking the door behind me, but I could still feel the camera's invisible gaze on my back. The old house wasn't breathing anymore. It was listening. I didn't plan to go back to the house that day. I told myself I needed air, that I'd stay at a hotel and think. But around noon, my phone rang. The caller ID read Hawthorne and Finch, Law Offices, Dad's lawyer. "Mrs. Clark?" His voice was deep, formal. "This is Mr. Hawthorne. There's an urgent matter regarding your father's estate." It seems, something was overlooked. Overlooked? My voice came out sharper than I intended. What do you mean? I'd rather not say over the phone. Could you come to my office this afternoon? The pause that followed felt heavy. I almost said no. Almost. But curiosity, the same kind that made me open that trapdoor, won again. By 3 o'clock, I stood outside his glass building, watching the city move on as if my father's secrets weren't unraveling one by one. Mr. Hawthorne greeted me with a strained smile. His office smelled like old paper and coffee gone cold. Behind him, tall shelves sagged with files. Your father left a secondary document, he said, unlocking a drawer. A sealed one. It concerns ownership of everything. I frowned. Everything? He slid an envelope toward me, thicker than the last one. It's labeled confidential addendum. Your father instructed it be given to you 1 month after the will's reading. That's today. The seal was unbroken. My fingers trembled as I reached for it, but a sudden crash startled us both. Somewhere in the corridor, drawers slammed open, papers fluttering like startled birds. Stay here, Hawthorne said, stepping out. Through the frosted glass, I saw blurred figures, 2, maybe 3. Voices low, urgent. One man in a gray suit brushed past the door, muttering something I couldn't catch. Then I heard him clearly. You're not supposed to have that. My pulse pounded. I grabbed the envelope and ran. Down the stairwell, through the lobby, into the rain. By the time I reached the street, the man was gone. But every passing car looked suspicious, every glance too long. I ducked into a cafe, hands shaking as I tore open the envelope. Inside wasn't a will. It was a letter, my father's handwriting again, steady and deliberate. If you're reading this, you already know the house isn't empty. What you inherit isn't wood or stone, it's truth. The company isn't Daniel's. It was never meant to be. There are documents proving it. Keep them safe. Trust no one. Beneath the letter lay photocopies, bank transfers, share certificates, and a small photo of my father shaking hands with someone whose face was blurred. The bell above the cafe door chimed. I looked up. Daniel stood there. Water dripped from his coat, eyes flat and unreadable. You shouldn't have that, he said softly, echoing the stranger's words. My fingers closed over the papers. You knew. His expression didn't change. Dad trusted me to run the business, Clara. You wouldn't understand the kind of pressure. I understand theft, I snapped. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind his calm, fear, maybe guilt. Then he smiled, the same smile that used to get him out of trouble as a boy. You've got it wrong. I came to protect you. People will come after those files. You don't know what's inside them. I stood, gripping the envelope tight. Then tell me. He hesitated. You wouldn't believe me. The cafe's lights flickered once. Outside, a car engine revved. Daniel's gaze shifted to the window, then back to me. Go home, he said. Now. But as I stepped out into the rain, I realized something. He hadn't come from work. He'd known exactly where I was. Back at the house, I spread the papers across the desk, heart hammering. Each document pointed to something bigger than a family argument, fraud, deception, missing funds. One name appeared again and again, Daniel Clark. Before I could read further, headlights swept across the window. I looked up just as the phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice whispered, "Don't trust your brother." Then the line went dead. The next morning, I woke to the sound of someone knocking, slow, deliberate, not urgent but impossible to ignore. Through the peephole, Daniel stood on the porch. His suit was immaculate, as if the chaos of yesterday hadn't touched him. I opened the door halfway. You shouldn't have come, I said. He smiled faintly. Neither should you. I didn't move. What do you want? To clear something up. He lifted a folder in his hand. You think you've uncovered something. But you only have half the story. I stepped aside. Against my better judgment, I let him in. The air in the house felt tighter with him inside, as though the walls were listening. He walked straight to the study, as if he'd never left. On the desk lay the papers I'd gathered the night before. He studied them, then dropped his folder beside mine. Here, he said. Look for yourself. Inside his folder was an identical set of documents, same typeface, same signatures, same dates. Only one line was different. In mine, the ownership transfer of the company was conditional on performance. In his, it was permanent. I blinked at the pages, trying to make sense of it. They can't both be real. Daniel leaned back in the chair, folding his arms. Exactly. Which means someone forged one. Maybe the lawyer. Maybe you. Me? My voice rose. Why would I? He cut me off gently. Dad never trusted you with business matters. He thought you were too emotional. Maybe you wanted to prove him wrong. The accusation landed like a slap. I took a breath to steady myself. You're lying. He left me that letter. The one that said what you own is more than you think. Daniel's expression didn't change. He left me the same one. I froze. That's impossible. He reached into his jacket pocket and slid a folded note across the table. My heart sank, it was identical. Same handwriting. Same words. He leaned forward. You see the problem? Someone wanted us to doubt everything. Dad's lawyer, maybe. Or someone else. The words sank into the silence. Then something caught my eye, a faint shimmer across the edge of one of the pages. I lifted it to the light. There, barely visible, was a watermark. Not a company logo. A single handwritten phrase in my father's looping script, if you're reading this, trust the house. I stared at it until my vision blurred. He left us clues, I whispered. Daniel frowned. What are you talking about? I shook my head slowly. You wouldn't understand. The tension thickened. Outside, rain pressed against the windows, and the sound filled every pause between us. Then Daniel said quietly, Mr. Hawthorne's missing. The words hit me harder than they should have. What do you mean missing? He didn't show up to work this morning. No calls. No trace. His assistant says he left a message about meeting someone from the Clark estate. That's you, Clara. My stomach turned cold. You think I don't know what to think anymore, he said softly. But if those documents go public, the company's finished. My life's finished. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Maybe it should be. For a second, we just looked at each other, siblings on opposite sides of a secret too big to share. Then a flash lit up the window. Not lightning. A camera. I rushed to the glass, but the street was empty, the wet pavement reflecting nothing but my own pale face. When I turned back, Daniel was gone. The folder too. Only one thing remained on the desk, a single photograph that hadn't been there before. It was me and Daniel as children, standing in front of the same house. But someone had written across the bottom in black ink, one of you already knows the truth. The air around me felt colder. Somewhere deep inside the house, I heard the faint click of a door closing. The police called it an accident. That was the first lie. Mr. Hawthorne's car had been found at the edge of the cliffs, engine still running, door wide open. No skid marks. No signs of struggle. Just gone. I stood by my living room window, listening to the rain slide down the glass. The police officer's voice from earlier still echoed in my head, he must have lost control. But I knew Mr. Hawthorne. He didn't lose control of anything. Daniel hadn't called since he vanished from the study 2 nights ago. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting his name. Half dreading it. By evening, the house had settled into its usual uneasy silence. I walked upstairs, checking every room even though I knew I was alone. Still, the air felt occupied, like someone had just stepped out. In the attic, the smell of dust and oil hung heavy. My father's old tape recorder sat on a shelf beside a stack of faded notebooks. Something about it felt deliberate, placed there for me to find. I pressed play. A click. Then, my father's voice, thin and crackling but unmistakably his. "If they find out what's in the safe, they'll destroy everything." My breath caught. He spoke again, slower this time, like he knew the words would outlive him. "I trusted the wrong people. If you're listening, Clara, look beneath the fireplace." Static swallowed his last words. I froze, every sound amplified, the hum of the attic light, the distant tick of a clock downstairs. My hands trembled as I switched off the tape. The fireplace. I climbed down the attic ladder too fast, nearly slipping on the last step. The living room felt darker now, as if the walls were waiting. I knelt in front of the fireplace, brushing aside old ashes and loose bricks. My fingers met something metallic beneath the soot. A square outline. Cold, solid. There it was, a small safe, bolted into the floor. For a moment, all I could do was stare. The last time I'd seen a safe like this was in Dad's office at the company. He always said, if you can't trust people, trust steel. I searched for the key, the combination, anything. Nothing. Then the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. My reflection flickered faintly in the window before disappearing. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. "Hello?" My voice cracked the silence. No answer. I reached for my phone flashlight and swept the beam across the room. A faint trail of mud led from the back door to where I knelt. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Someone had been inside again. I moved slowly toward the door. The lock was intact, the handle cold. But the curtain near the study fluttered even though no window was open. I turned, and froze. On the floor by the study door lay a single photograph. Mr. Hawthorne. His tie was loose, his expression unreadable. Across the bottom, the same handwriting as before, he knew. My throat went dry. I grabbed the photo and backed away from the window, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I saw it, faint light glinting in the corner near the ceiling. Another camera. Smaller. Newer. I stood motionless, heart hammering. The red light blinked once, twice, then stopped. I unplugged the lamp, hoping to kill the power. But before I could move, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You're close." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. No sender name, no trace. For the first time since Dad's death, I felt something colder than fear, certainty. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about what my father had hidden, what Mr. Hawthorne had died protecting. I turned back toward the safe. The air around the fireplace was cooler now, like a draft seeping from the cracks. I pressed my ear against it and heard something faint, metal shifting inside, like gears turning. The safe wasn't locked anymore. And yet, I hadn't touched it. I knelt in front of the fireplace, my pulse so loud it filled the room. The safe door stood slightly ajar, a thin crack of darkness waiting. I hesitated, every instinct screaming to stop, but curiosity pulled harder. When I pulled it open, the hinges groaned like something alive. Inside, stacks of papers had yellowed with time, their edges curling. Beneath them, a single blue envelope sealed with wax. My father's handwriting looped across it, for Clara. I reached for it carefully, afraid it would crumble. The moment my fingers brushed the seal, the house made a low sound, a settling groan from deep within its bones. "Dad," I whispered. "What did you hide from us?" I tore the wax. Inside were documents, letters, and blueprints. They weren't for the house. They were for the company. The blueprints outlined hidden accounts, secret bank transfers, and the name of an investor I didn't recognize. Each letter was more revealing than the last. My father had known the company was collapsing years before he died. He'd been selling off assets quietly, converting everything into something safer: real estate, property, even patents. All of it under one name. Mine. My throat went dry. He'd left me everything. Not Daniel. Me. That's when I found the bank envelope tucked behind the stack. Inside was a ledger, neat and precise. And a note, folded small. If you are reading this, Clara, it means I didn't get the chance to fix what's coming. Daniel's partners are not who they seem. They will use my death to claim what isn't theirs. Protect yourself. Protect what's yours. The sound of the rain outside grew harder, almost violent. I stood, clutching the papers to my chest, when a soft metallic sound echoed behind me, like a door latch. I turned sharply. The study door, which I'd left closed, was open now. A faint trail of smoke drifted through the crack. I ran. The hallway glowed orange before I reached it. Flames crawled up the wallpaper, eating through the edges like hungry hands. The air filled with the smell of burning varnish. Someone had set the house on fire. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and pushed forward. My father's papers were still clutched against me, the only thing I couldn't let go. Help! I shouted, but my voice was drowned by the crackle of flames. The smoke grew thicker. I dropped low, crawling toward the front door, coughing hard. My lungs burned, my eyes watered, but I kept going, inch by inch, until the cool air hit my face. I tumbled out onto the porch just as a shadow moved through the smoke behind me. A figure stood inside the doorway, half hidden by flame. Tall, motionless. Watching. Daniel? I rasped. No answer. The shadow stepped closer, but before I could make out a face, the roof gave a low rumble. A beam cracked. I scrambled down the steps as the front room collapsed behind me, sparks scattering into the night. The shadow disappeared into the fire. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the entire west side of the house was gone. I stood in the rain, blanket around my shoulders, the papers hidden beneath it. One of the firefighters approached. Anyone else inside? I shook my head automatically. Then stopped. I don't know. They went in anyway. Hours later, one returned, soot streaking his helmet. No one in there, he said. But we did find something odd. He held out a small piece of metal. A camera. Melted at the edges, but still recognizable. I took it without a word. Back at the shelter that night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that shadow in the doorway replayed again and again. If it wasn't Daniel, who was it? Then, just before dawn, my phone buzzed. A text. From Daniel. You're alive. Good. We need to talk. No apology. No explanation. Only those words. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, the faint reflection of my face merging with the glow. He knew about the fire. And somehow, he didn't sound surprised. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. Ceiling. Sheets. Walls. For a moment, I thought I'd died and the house had followed me here. Then the steady beep of a monitor pulled me back. A nurse appeared, her smile polite but practiced. You're safe, Mrs. Clark. You inhaled quite a bit of smoke, but you're going to be all right. Safe. The word didn't fit. How long? I whispered. 2 days. 2 days gone. The fire, the shadow, the papers, had it all been real? I reached for the bedside table. My father's envelope was there, water-stained but intact. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Then a shadow fell over the doorway. Daniel. He looked exhausted, his hair disheveled for once, his tie askew. In his hand, a cup of coffee gone cold. You should have called me sooner, he said. I wanted to laugh. You tried to kill me. He didn't flinch. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be here. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the air itself pulled back to listen. He moved closer to the bed, his voice low. The police think the fire was electrical. I told them the wiring in that house was ancient. Is that what you told them? I asked quietly. He hesitated, then sat down. We both know what was in that safe. Dad's debts. The company's collapse. Everything he tried to hide. My heart sank. Debts? Daniel nodded. Massive ones. If anyone finds out, the board will shut us down. I'll lose everything. You'll lose what's left of your inheritance. His words were too smooth, too easy. That's not true, I said. He left me the documents. The real ones. They don't show debts. They show fraud. Daniel's eyes flickered, just for a second, and I knew I was right. I reached for the envelope, sliding it halfway across the blanket. You already knew, didn't you? He leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. Listen to me. Those papers will ruin you too. They tie us both to the same accounts. If you hand them over, you'll go down with me. My hands trembled. You forged those signatures. His calm broke. I did what I had to do. After Dad cut me out, what did you expect me to live on? His pity? The nurse knocked gently on the doorframe. Visiting hours are almost over. Daniel straightened, his mask of composure slipping back into place. Think carefully, Clara. Once you show those papers to anyone, there's no turning back. He left without another word. I stared at the door long after it clicked shut. The steady beeping of the monitor filled the silence. When the nurse returned to check the 4-line, she noticed my shaking hands. You have someone you can call? I nodded faintly. Maybe. The moment she left, I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over the keypad, unsure who I trusted. I couldn't go to Daniel. Couldn't go to the police, at least not yet. Then I remembered the lawyer's assistant. Marla. She'd been at the reading of the will, quiet, observant. The kind of person who remembered everything but said nothing. I found her number in an old voicemail and pressed call. It rang twice. Then a tired voice answered, Clara? Relief flooded through me. Marla, thank God. I need your help. She hesitated. I was hoping you'd call. Mr. Hawthorne left something with me, something he didn't trust to keep at the office. What is it? Proof, she said simply. But we can't talk on the phone. Meet me tomorrow, same cafe where you saw him last. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, the weight of the moment sinking in. Proof. That was what Dad's letter had promised all along. Outside the hospital window, the city lights blurred in the rain. Somewhere out there, the truth waited, hidden between what Daniel claimed and what my father left behind. And tomorrow, I was finally going to see it. The cafe looked different in daylight. Quieter. Softer. But I couldn't shake the feeling that every window was a pair of eyes watching. I sat at the same corner table where I'd last seen Daniel, my coat buttoned to the throat, the envelope hidden in my bag. Marla arrived 5 minutes late, a scarf wrapped high around her face. She looked tired, her eyes darting to every corner before she slid into the chair across from me. You shouldn't have called me from your own phone, she said. I didn't have a choice. She nodded once, then opened her briefcase just enough for me to see the folder inside. Mr. Hawthorne made copies of everything before the accident. 2 wills. 1 real, 1 fake. He was trying to protect you. My heart stopped for a beat. Protect me from what? From your brother, she said simply. Your father suspected Daniel might alter the documents. He left a way to prove which is genuine. I leaned forward. What way? She handed me a small USB drive. A recording. Your father and Daniel, in his office, 2 weeks before he died. I stared at it. You listened? Her lips pressed together. I had to. It's difficult. Before I could speak, her phone buzzed. She silenced it immediately. We can't stay here long. Do you have somewhere safe? I nodded, though I didn't. I paid for the untouched coffee, and we walked out together. But as we crossed the street, a dark sedan slowed beside us. Marla's grip tightened on my arm. Keep walking, she whispered. We turned the corner, and she pressed the USB into my palm. Go. Don't call me again. Then she slipped into the crowd, gone before I could stop her. Back at the hotel, I locked the door, closed every curtain, and plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flickered, and my father's voice filled the room. Daniel, this isn't about money. It's about trust. Then Daniel's voice, calm, sharp. You trusted the wrong child, Dad. She doesn't understand what this family needs. I understand perfectly, my father said. You've been using the company's funds for your own deals. I have the ledgers. If you don't stop, I'll. A slam cut him off. Papers rustled. Daniel again, angrier now. If you expose me, she'll take the fall too. Her name's on half of those accounts. You think you can protect her, but you've already ruined her. Static filled the final seconds, then silence. I sat frozen, my hands trembling. Every part of me wanted to deny what I'd heard. But there was no escaping it. Daniel had betrayed us both, and my father had known. I played the recording again, slower, trying to catch every sound. At the end, beneath the hiss of static, a faint noise repeated 3 times. Not random. A pattern. I increased the volume. It was a code, 3 knocks, then 2. My father's old signal. He used it whenever he hid something important. Trust the house, he'd written. Even after the fire, part of it still stood. The east wing, the one room untouched. I had to go back. Night fell fast. I drove through the rain until the ruins appeared like a ghost on the hill. The driveway was slick with mud, the air thick with the scent of smoke and wet earth. The house stood hollow, but the east side remained, a skeleton of stone and shadow. I stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the dark. The beam found the remains of the study's wall, blackened but still upright. 3 faint knocks echoed, too deliberate to be wind. My breath caught. I followed the sound to a loose panel near the floor. Inside, wrapped in scorched fabric, was a metal tin. I pried it open with shaking hands. Inside lay a smaller envelope, sealed and clean despite the ash. My father's handwriting again, final testament. Outside, a car engine idled. Headlights swept through the broken window. Daniel's voice called from the dark. Clara, I know you're in there. I froze, the envelope still in my hands. The engine stopped. Silence. Then footsteps. The courtroom smelled of polished wooden nerves. Every sound, every shuffle, every cough, echoed off the marble walls like a verdict waiting to be spoken. I sat behind the plaintiff's table, the folder of documents on my lap, the USB drive in evidence. My palms were damp. Across from me, Daniel leaned back in his chair, immaculate as always, his expression unreadable. He looked like someone waiting for a meeting to end, not a trial to decide his future. The judge entered, and we rose. My heart thudded so hard I barely heard the opening statements. All I could see was Daniel, his eyes flicking to me every few seconds as if daring me to flinch. When the recording began, the room fell silent. My father's voice filled the air again, weary but firm. Daniel, this isn't about money. It's about trust. Then Daniel's reply, the same one that had haunted my sleep for days. You've already ruined her. The audio crackled, then ended. For a moment, even the judge seemed to stop breathing. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, the recording is time-stamped and verified. The witness, Ms. Clark, can confirm its origin. The judge turned to me. Ms. Clark? I rose slowly, clutching the edge of the table for balance. It was recorded in my father's office 2 weeks before he died. He left clues for me to find it, hidden in our family home. Do you believe your brother intended to defraud you? I don't believe it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I know it. Daniel's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Daniel finally spoke, his tone deceptively calm. My father was confused before he died. He said things he didn't mean. Enough, the judge interrupted. The evidence speaks clearly. The words hit Daniel harder than any argument could. I saw it, the first crack in his composure. His shoulders slumped, his jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, I saw not the man who had lied and schemed, but the brother I'd once trusted. The final moments blurred. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Clara Clark. Ownership of Clark Industries and all remaining assets are to be transferred accordingly. Daniel Clark is found guilty of corporate fraud and obstruction. It was over. The sound of chairs scraping filled the room. Reporters whispered, pens scratched. But I heard none of it. All I could see was Daniel, standing as the officers approached. He turned to me, eyes hollow. He loved you more, you know. The words were quiet, almost gentle. Then he let himself be led away. I sat down slowly, the adrenaline draining from my body until my hands shook. For so long, I'd imagined this moment, justice, resolution, peace. But now, as the courtroom emptied, all I felt was an ache deeper than victory. When I stepped outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. The world looked too normal, too calm for everything that had just fallen apart. The wind carried the scent of rain. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. Later, when I returned to what was left of the house, the ruins were quiet. Ashes had cooled. The east wall still stood, and from somewhere inside came a faint metallic click. I followed the sound to my father's old study. On the desk, the melted camera from the fire blinked once, then played a final voice message. His voice was soft, fragile, almost lost beneath static. Family isn't what you inherit, Clara. It's what you rebuild. The message ended. I stood in the dim light, the last embers of the fire long gone, and finally understood. The house hadn't been a curse, it had been a test. A way for him to make sure I found my strength, not his wealth. I opened the window. Fresh air rushed in, cool and clean. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. And so did I. I stayed in the house long after the trial ended. The walls no longer frightened me, they listened. They had seen everything, the secrets, the fire, the truth, and still stood. Each morning, I opened every window, letting the wind move through rooms that once held whispers. The air no longer smelled of dust but of rain and renewal. I painted the study first. The same place where Dad's lies, and Daniel's, had unraveled. It became my space now, light, quiet, mine. I placed the old envelope on the desk, its edges softened by time. The words inside had started everything, what you own is more than you think. For months I had read it as a riddle. Now it felt like a promise. What I owned was not the company, or the deeds, or the papers that lawyers fought over. It was my voice. My peace. The legal world called what happened justice. But justice is colder than I expected. It doesn't fix what's broken, it only stops the breaking. Healing is something else entirely. Some nights I still dream of the fire, the sound of wood splitting, the rush of smoke, but it no longer ends in fear. It ends with me standing outside, watching the house rise again. The company, my father's legacy, is rebuilding slowly. I kept his name but changed its purpose. The same business that once fed greed now funds restoration, homes, schools, places meant to shelter. I wanted something my father would recognize, and Daniel might have learned from. People call me strong. I'm not sure they're right. Strength isn't what saved me. It was clarity, the moment I stopped waiting for someone to hand me peace and started making it myself. Before I left the study tonight, I found the last recording my father had made. It had survived the fire somehow, warped but clear enough to hear. "If you're listening, Clara," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "then you've already done more than I could. Don't guard what I left you. Use it." I closed my eyes and let the words settle. Then I switched off the light, letting the quiet hold me. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't breathe, it rested. And so did I.